Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Chris Conte from NewsChannel 5 and Chaz Sisk from WPLN Nashville Public Radio. Chris, we're talking about any linkage between the governor's race and the Senate race. And I think that Mayor Dean was talking about how this sort of entry of Phil Bredesen gives the Democrats more credibility across the state. But can any Democrat win a statewide race in Tennessee?
It's a big question,
state?
but I mean, I think if you are a Democrat and you're looking at one of these bigger statewide offices, your best shot is to attach yourself to someone like a Phil Bredesen, because I mean, you have to remember he won 95 counties back in 2006, all 95 counties, and so who knows? I mean, I think really that's going to be the most fascinating part of this year is that support that Phil Bredesen used to have still out there? Is his name recognition still out there? Is his brand still intact? And even if it is, does that survive this, kind of wave of Trumpism that we've seen?
Speaking of Trumpism, Chaz, do Republicans attack the way the Democrats attach themselves perhaps to Phil Bredesen? Do Republicans attach themselves to Donald Trump? And how well is that brand still working here, given what's happened his first year in office? He was very popular here in 2016. He was almost as strong here as Phil Bredesen was earlier.
Yeah, I think what you hear a lot of them say is that they support the Trump agenda, and they try to make a distinction between supporting the president directly and supporting the ideas that he espouses in terms of immigration and welfare reform and things like that. So, Trump is still very popular, obviously, in Tennessee. He's not as popular as he was a year ago. He may not be as popular, he may be even less popular in a year from now, or he may be very popular. I think they're trying to give themselves some flexibility in terms of how closely they align themselves with the brand of the man.
But, Chris, it's interesting that Phil Bredesen is backing off from doing anything that would smack of his race being a referendum on Donald Trump. Yeah. He wants to talk about what he needs to do in Washington to help Tennessee.
Well, and we sat down with him a couple weeks ago, and, I said to him, I said, well, how do you kind of navigate these waters right now? And I said, would you almost be better off just running as an independent? Because even though he has this name brand behind him and people know who he is, are too many people just going to go into that voting booth and just see the D next to his name in 2018 at the end of this year and say, no way? Have we gotten to that point where even all the great things that he may have done for the state and the budget, does that matter anymore if there's a D or an R next to your name?
Chaz, Marsha Blackburn, a congressman, also appears to be the leading Republican, but she does have another former congressman, Stephen Fincher, running against her. Stephen Fincher got a chance. It looks like there's one poll out from a group supporting Blackburn that says he has no chance, but did they put that poll out to sort of pour some cold water on whatever Fincher might be able to do?
I think so. I mean, Congressman Fincher has done very well in the fundraising, especially when you compare it to someone like Congresswoman Blackburn, who's been in Congress for quite a long time and is very established. He was only in for 3 terms, but he's got quite a nest egg to run on, and he's a very disciplined candidate. I mean, he was very popular in his district. I mean, I think he's got a very good shot against Congresswoman Blackburn.
Let's talk a little bit about the legislature, all not much in depth in terms of their races. May Beaver Senate seat was filled, and there was a lot closer race in that Republican district for a Democrat almost winning up there. There's a couple of other special races, one for Jim Tracy coming up. Is there any chance that Tennessee is going to look like Virginia or some of the other states that we saw this past year in terms of election? Do the Democrats have a chance to at least shave down the size of the Republican supermajority?
I do think they have a chance to shave down the size of the supermajority. If you look historically at where we are in the cycle, certainly the opposition party usually is in a good position to pick up some seats across the country. And I think going back to what we were talking about Phil Bredesen earlier about not running as anti-Trump, that's what you're hearing a lot of these Democratic candidates in Tennessee and around the country. They're trying to, they sort of can take for granted the people who are anti-Trump, who are going to vote Democratic because they're anti-Trump, they're going to vote for them. The real thing is they need to try to show something to the voter who's going to waver between the two, and that's why you sort of see them, maybe not attacking the president directly.
Chris, I want to go back a little bit to the legislature. The governor's going to be making his last State of the State speech in a couple of weeks. He put out a news release this week from his office talking about the fact that 2007 saw 28,000 new jobs being added to the state. The unemployment rate is almost 2 points lower than it was. Yet if you listen to the Republican primary going on to take his place, most of those candidates, except perhaps for Speaker Harwell, are talking about send me to Nashville and I'll clean all that stuff up there. That's a little bit of a disconnect, isn't it, within his own party?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it'll be interesting too to see who he backs. I mean, and I think too.
Well, he says he's not going to endorse anybody, but it'll be interesting who he leans for, maybe.
Right.
And the other thing too, next Monday when he gives his State of the State, I mean, you're talking about, he's almost a lame duck governor here. Are we really going to see any kind of big pieces of legislation? I don't think so. I mean,
the UT board shaping that side, is that sort of an inside baseball kind of thing?
Well, that's a very difficult lift for sure. I mean, it is a bit of inside baseball. It's not going to have a huge constituency behind it. And, and any time you remove somebody from a board, you make some enemies. So I think that's going to be a very tough one for him to pass.
And maybe, maybe healthcare comes back. I don't know. I mean, I think, there was enough kind of groundswell last week, and now that the gas tax is out of the way, that, I don't think he would bring Insured Tennessee back, but maybe maybe he's still looking at these 300,000 people that are kind of left in this gap and saying, well, I don't have anything to lose at this point, so why not
and I would say opioids, I think,
them.
is something he certainly has to address in his last year.
Chad Sis, thank you so much for joining us, and Chris Conte, thank you as well. It's going to be an interesting legislative session, and who knows what's going to happen with the campaigns. It'll be interesting as well. Thanks a lot. And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics. Hope you can be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.